Can I ask a question here?
Yeah.
That I've been meaning to ask, and I cannot believe I haven't asked this before. Why did you decide to set up the roles in this Copilot the way you have, right? Like, because basically right now the way it is the the user using the Copilot is like quote unquote the person giving the interview, and then the Copilot is like the interviewee, which it's kind of counterintuitive, right? Like if you want to use it for practicing, why wouldn't you just simulate it the other way? So yeah, can you walk me through why you made it that way?
It's funny. That's like the first question Tal asked me, and it's the first question Peter Yang asked me when I went on his podcast. Um, and I've actually evolved my answer to this because the more I realize it's not obvious to people, the more I have to kind of like really get straight in my own head on why that's how I started. I think now what I would say is I have a framework that I didn't really have articulated for this at the time that I did this, but the framework I have now is like I believe it's important to get ready for interviews, for these exact type of interviews at least, in three phases. And I think the first phase is getting comfortable with the content. Okay, so if you didn't have to worry about how you deliver the content verbally, you didn't have to worry about time management with unlimited time, and like you just take your time, take a whole week if you want to work through this question. Can you get through the content in a way that is like passing content? Okay. Like, does your brain understand how to come up with this stuff? Right. And then only once you're comfortable with the content as a foundation, then do I tell people I think it's smart to start investing time in getting practice delivering the content. And then once they can get comfortable delivering the content, let's say maybe it takes someone an hour and a half to get through it verbally with someone, then now you start tightening up time management so you can get it down, little by little to 35 minutes, which is what you want to be able to do in these interviews. And the mistake, and the reason I've recently formalized this in my head at least, and I think it's a really good kind of like framework, is because I would see people schedule admittedly not cheap one-on-one mocks with me who didn't take my course, because I do get people reaching out from like LinkedIn or whatever that want to do mocks, and I would take the call. Like I would be like, sure, I'll do a product sense mock with you or an analytical thinking mock with you, and I would show up, and they would just it was clear that they were trying to simultaneously do the very foundational work on the content, the delivery, and the time management all in one. And they would just bomb the mock, right? And I would have to stop the mock and be like, hold on, like, can you tell me like what kind of prep have you done before this mock? And I realized people were not spending enough time doing the preparation on the content before they even got into the delivery. And I felt bad taking their money. So I'm like, hey, I have a bunch of like free resources online. Why don't you go familiarize yourself with this stuff? And when you're comfortable with the content, come back and we'll basically do a mock, and I'm not going to charge you again for it or whatever. But like, I felt people were just they were just skipping the step of like practicing the content. So to tie, tie that to your question, that's probably why I started with the AI playing the role of the candidate, because I think subconsciously I was kind of trying to use this to create an AI powered workflow for doing what I was doing back in 2020 when I was practicing for my meta interviews, which was to literally watch people on YouTube and the recorded mocks, like how did they approach this question? And then try to like almost reverse engineer the pattern matching in my head to come up with my own way of approaching the questions.
Yeah. No, that's actually a really helpful way to think about it. And just to like make sure that I got it. So there's like basically like three steps or phases, right? The first step is like the content, right? Make sure that actually like, what a great answer looks like. And the second one is like the delivery, like make sure you're like actually, sharing that information in a way that's helpful. And then the third one is like timing, right? Of like kind of like crushing the, make sure that you're, being concise, that you're like managing like the entire, maybe 45 minutes that you have to make sure you get to cover all the steps, and that you're like investing and allocating time accordingly for each of the kind of maybe questions or follow-ups. Yeah, that's super interesting. And it actually like resonates. I think like one of like, one of the first like Uber guides that we sold, someone was like, hey, like it would be really cool if like I could see what like a great like jam looks like in practice, which is I think kind of getting to what you're getting at here.
Exactly.
And
People love, like, some of the content that I put out there that people find most valuable is like recordings. Like, people that take my course get um, recordings of me answering the questions that we work through in the case. And like, we take 2 hours to work through a question for product sense and
wow,
2 hours to work through analytical thinking. I'm guiding the discussion. I'm seeding a lot of the content, but I'm really like thinking out loud with them about why I'm making each of those decisions. And then I send them a link to a recording of me actually performing as a candidate in a simulated mock with Brian Kemmler, who's a friend of mine who helps. He joins as a guest in the course. But I send them a link to, like, hey, here's how I took that thing that we just took 2 hours to do, and I deliver it in a 35-minute, well, technically 45 minutes, including start to finish stuff, mock interview. And the ability to see like how to come up with it in that long form, and then how to actually deliver it with time management, is what gets people to start, um, their brain starts working on everything that they do to fit within those constraints, because they actually have like an example of good that they can start mapping to, like a baseline.
yeah.